Hey everybody, this is Steve from your Wellness Warrior Coach. Today I want to talk a little bit about nutrition. I want to kind of get you thinking about 4 different groups of food that we really need to take a serious look at for our long-term health. 70% of food nowadays is processed, so it's not in its original form. As you know, our genes adapt to different things in our environment, but they don't really adapt that fast. And before, let's say about 1900, there weren't very many sugary foods, there weren't very many sugary drinks. And things sort of changed after that. And now we're talking about 120 plus years. In an evolutionary standpoint, that's really not that much time. So that leads us to a little discussion about insulin. So insulin is that energy storage hormone. Your bloodstream can only hold about 5 grams of sugar. That's it, only 5 grams. So that is not very much at all. So if you think about it, 5 grams is a little more than a teaspoon in your whole bloodstream. So that is not very much at all. When you put sugar into your system, your pancreas has to secrete insulin to clear the blood of that sugar. So think about a few things now. We can think about like Coke or Pepsi. If you look at the nutritional label for Coke and Pepsi, you'll find out it's about 42 grams of sugar in each can of Pepsi or Coke. All right, that equates to 10.5 teaspoons of sugar. It's a lot of sugar. Remember before we said your bloodstream can handle 5 of those. So when you take down that Coke or Pepsi, that sends your pancreas into, that sends the warning bells off to start cranking out some insulin to take care of all that sugar that's in the bloodstream. So as you can tell, this will put a little bit of stress on your system. Over a long period of time, our bodies get impaired because there's just so much sugar going into our systems, and sometimes we even become insulin resistant. What does insulin resistant mean? This is when the cells become less sensitive to insulin. So insulin is kind of like that molecule that attaches to the cell to send things into the cell that your cell needs in order to survive. So if your cells become insulin resistant, then there's less of a chance of the stuff that your cell needs to have getting into the cell for it to use. So that increases the amount of glucose or sugar in your bloodstream. And that in turn makes your pancreas secrete even more insulin. And we just can't function that well when we throw off the balance. Since our cells cannot really take in very much sugar, our pancreas makes more insulin, and when our cells can't take any more in, whether that be our blood cells, which can't hold that much, all of the cells in our body, or even our muscle cells, when they're full and they have all the sugar or glucose that they need, that insulin becomes a vehicle to your fat cells, and all of that extra sugar is stored as fat. So, and a lot of people eat a lot of sugar day in and day out, whether it's in the form of like just pure sugar or in their foods. So where does most of that sugar come from? Well, there's basically 3 commodity crops in the world, 3 or 4 commodity crops in the world. Early in the 19th century, or the 1900s, we were on a mission to feed the growing population of the world. We kind of picked on 3 or 4 commodity crops to do that. So rice, wheat, corn, and soy were the ones that we really focused on to help feed the world. So we genetically modified those things to, and wheat in particular, to grow in smaller areas and to grow smaller. So there was less waste when they were in the harvest. And these 4 commodity crops are very, very cheap products. They're grains, and they're a very, very low nutritional value. But they also have a lot of carbohydrates. And at the time, we thought, okay, we're going to feed all these people all these carbohydrates so they can survive on this planet. So out of basically the 3,000 types of food that we have in this world that we can eat, we picked 4 of those in order to focus on. So if you ever looked, these foods are found in most processed food, and we're just not designed to be able to process this food either. Our systems are just not able to do it very efficiently. Wheat and some others also have a high amount of gluten. So what gluten does is it actually binds to that intestinal lining. There's little junctions in there called tight junctions that open to let things into the bloodstream. This gluten and the amino acids that make up gluten latch onto those tight junctions and leave them open. So in the small intestines, this eventually leads to leaky gut. And if you really think back, if you're, as old as I am, or not even as old as I am, I remember hearing about leaky gut even 10 years ago. And then leaky gut tends to evolve into chronic inflammation because you have all of these particles that are floating around your body that your body is not able to identify. When your body is not able to identify those, then your immune system acts up and attacks these things, causing inflammation. So most of the diseases in this country are caused by chronic inflammation, and that is the root cause of many of these diseases. They also have, these commodity crops also have addictive qualities, and they're also opioid-like. They have found, and this is with food researchers and regular researchers, they have found that people tend to ingest 400 more calories per meal when just wheat alone is present. And if you go and take a look at some of the labels in your pantry and see which ones contain wheat, and they're required to put that on as an allergen because a lot of people are allergic to wheat. Think about in your head, have I ever overeaten some of these things that had wheat in them? And maybe you're thinking to yourself that this is a problem that you have, and that you just tend to overeat all of these things all the time. Well, I've got news for you. It's probably not. It may be you a little bit, but for the most part, it's that they put wheat in there, and that opens up those tight junctions and makes your body resistant to feeling full. And this makes you want to eat more. Not very nice, is it? Basically, this product in food is designed to make you eat as much as possible. So if you think about it, that's what these processed food companies want you to do. They want you to continue to buy their product. They want you to buy a lot of their product because then their profit margins go up. So they put this wheat in there to help you make you even eat more food than you really even need or want. All right, so the next group of things is called industrial seed oils. So you're probably like, what in the world are these things? I certainly can't possibly eat any of those, right? Here they are. These are the major ones. There are some other ones. If you go to Dr. Kate Shanahan, she talks about 8 seed oils that are really bad, really, really bad. And some of those are soy, corn, cottonseed, safflower, sunflower, rapeseed, and canola. You might even have some of these at home. So why are these so bad? First of all, they look very similar to saturated fats to the cell. So the cell then will incorporate some of these fats into the cell membrane. This can cause some distortions in the cell membrane and, make them not as easy to let things into the cell, let things out of the cell, just make them very less efficient, and inhibits a lot of their cellular function. It's even been found to even cause DNA damage. Like I mentioned before, Kate Shanahan, she likens this damage that these oils do as like radiation damage to the cells. So she also mentioned in one of her podcasts that she did when COVID was coming out that she really challenged people to find somebody that had not had any of these industrial seed oils to see if, she thinks that they would not suffer harmful consequences as a result of not having their cells being compromised by these industrial seed oils. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Not only that, but there's also an increased level of omega-6 fatty acids in the system from these oils. So what are those? Those lead to inflammation. And inflammation is the root cause of most of our societal diseases that we have. So some omega-6s are good because we need some acute inflammation, like when we get a cut or a bruise, we need some inflammation there in order to get that stuff repaired. But for the most part, we don't need the level of omega-6s that these things provide for us. We get plenty enough of those, in our other foods that we could eat. So where might we find some of these industrial oils? So salad dressing is one of these places that these things reside, frozen foods, processed foods. And I want to paint a picture of you about how they get these oils out of these seeds. So you can't really just squeeze these things and get oil out of them. Think about vegetable oil. I can't squeeze a vegetable and oil like drain out of it. I challenge any of you to, squeeze a carrot and see if you can get some oil out of it. You might get some water out of it, but oil is a whole different thing. So what they use is hexane. They use hexane to draw the oil out. They use extreme heat and pressure to extract these oils to get them out of these things. So that's when the molecular structure of these oils can be compromised during this extreme heat and pressure, and with this hexane that they also add. Now think about like an avocado or an olive. You may not have ever done this before, but you can squeeze those things and you can get oil out of them. So think about those oils that can just get oil out of compared to, squeeze some sunflower seeds and try to get oil out of those things. Probably good luck on that one, eh? All right, the last thing I want to talk about is refined sugar. This is just free sugar. This is really not designed to be consumed. It does create a lot of fat on the body. Grains are mostly sugar as well. And if you think about it, our liver can hold 70 grams of sugar. Our blood can hold 5 grams, which we talked about before, a little over a teaspoon. And our muscles can hold about 200 or 300 grams of sugar. So if you eat more than that, where is it going to go? Or if your cells already have that and you eat some more, where's it going to go? It's got to be stored as fat. It's the only other place it can go. So you may think, and some people may think that, you can, I don't really feel like I eat a lot, but if there's no room in your liver, blood, or muscles to take any additional sugar that you eat, then it has to be stored as fat, all right? And that's the scary part. That's the place where, you think that you might be eating the right things, but I keep getting fat. I can't lose any weight. And you kind of cycle in this little area. So eating a high carb diet doesn't let your body get rid of any of the fat or get rid of any of the sugar that's already in your cells and in your muscles and in your liver. So we're just not adapted to eat like this. So if you think about, evolutionarily, when these foods were around, we didn't have strawberries all year round. We didn't have grapefruits all year round. They were seasonal, right? And generally they were ripened in the fall. So, when you hear people say put on the winter fat, well, that used to be a real thing because you had to put on the winter fat in order for you to make it through the winter. Now, when you put on the winter, you can put on the winter fat in winter, spring, summer, and fall. There's no time for you to use any of that fat because those fruits and vegetables, or those fruits, are still around. Those grains are still around. Those sugary processed foods are still around. So you just continue to store and store and store those sugars, and it just makes it easier to gain weight and harder to lose weight. So, there's a million types of diets out there. I know many clients have tried different types of diets, and in my mind, a diet starts at one point, ends at another point. And then you have some time in the middle where you're working on it. And for the clients that I know, they've started a diet and they end a diet. So what happens at the end of the diet? You just go back to the way that you're eating, right? So in my mind, even if you're plant-based, carnivore, you do the keto diet, Weight Watchers, Atkins, whatever, there seems to be, for most people, an endpoint. All right. Eating, in my mind, can't be something that has a beginning and an end. It really has to be a lifestyle change. You have to eat the way that you want to eat all the time, not for certain periods of time. But there's a lot of things that you really need to take into account when you're trying to think about, what avenue do I want to go? Do I want to go more plant-based, more carnivore, more keto? You need to think about, do you have autoimmunity problems? Do you have food allergies? Are there some genetic factors that you have to think about? Heritage is another thing. For instance, Asians often are lactose intolerant because they just don't have the gene for that. Milk and dairy products were not, in their lifestyle for thousands and thousands of years. So they really had no use to make a gene to help you digest dairy better. Northern Europeans, on the other hand, are able to tolerate dairy a little bit better because they were growing cows. They were, milking cows, making, milk, drinking milk, making cheese, and all of those dairy products. So you need to find out what works best for you. And sometimes, we're all different. We're all like an experiment of one, and we need to figure that out. For instance, if you're Alaskan, if you're like an Alaskan Indian, you pretty much subsisted on fat and protein your whole lives because there just wasn't a lot of plants to eat. So here's the thing. Here's the big thing. When we eliminate grains, industrial seed oils, processed foods, and sugar, we're already 80 to 90% of the way there. 80 to 90% by just doing those 4 things. All right. And then comes down to, what's that last 10 or 20% that you can add, that you can have in your eating lifestyle to make you flourish, to make you have as much energy as you want, to help you sleep the way that you want every night and get full and restful sleep. So those are the things I really want you to think about when we're talking about, nutrition and figuring out what's the best food lifestyle for you. All right. Thanks a lot for listening. I really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if you did. And hopefully we'll be on here soon. Thanks a lot. Have a great day. You can find me at wellnesswarrior.coach. Bye-bye.